policy? What were you trying to say?
I was trying to reveal the thinking behind that, the kinds of assumptions, the kind of world that exists inside their mind, and therefore why those assumptions are so dangerous in the long run. It's not just the policies mentioned in that
They
book.
think they're better than everybody else.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. And that's what makes them dangerous. Even all the policies that are mentioned there, 20 years from now, those policies may not be the policies we're concerned about. But that mindset will still be there. And what makes them tremendously dangerous is that facts that contradict what they believe are simply ignored or evaded.
Where does the press fall into this as the Anointed Group? Are they part of the Anointed?
Oh, absolutely. They're a major part of it, because one of the reasons that people don't get many of the facts that go against what's believed is that the press doesn't choose to publicize those facts.
Hey everybody, Mr. Dragonbeard. I got a sort of a new setup here, and I'm not recording walking around my truck again because that's not going to be a thing probably for a while. I don't know. It's a little weird sitting down while I'm talking. But I thought, hey, why not make some more videos along the way? Talk about things that are going on up here. I know a lot of people have been curious about what's going on in Canada, at least until the invasion of Ukraine occurred, which has now taken over the headlines, but there's still a lot of grassroots concerns in the Western world about freedom and truck convoys, which kicked off in a big way in Canada. I am, if you don't know, a truck driver. My company fired me for their own mandate that was not government regulated at all. I won't go into that. I've already talked about it in a previous couple of videos. So, what shall we talk about today? All right. I'm going to just, since I'm at a computer instead of using my phone, let's talk about the FLQ. The FLQ is what our current Prime Minister's father dealt with in 1970 when he enacted the War Measures Act, which was the Emergencies Act of the day. Pierre Trudeau did it for a terrorist group called the FLQ, who wanted to liberate Quebec, meaning separate from the rest of Canada. They had been placing bombs and threatening people directly since 1963. The fourth wave, which is what really brought this to a head, but it was slowly escalating. But I mean, already we're at a point where, compared to the trucking convoy, which was entirely peaceful, and very public about its behavior, very constitutional in its goals, even though it was demonized. These people wanted to overthrow the government, at least in terms of being in Quebec, and they were willing to take their fight to the government with violence. Within a year, 52 bombs, and I'm talking about places outside of police stations, military locations, businesses, homes, right? And they still had not used the War Measures Act until the October crisis. And I'm just going through this very quickly. In October 1970, which is where that name comes from, they kidnapped James Richard Cross, a British trade commissioner, while he was leaving his home for work. And then shortly after, kidnapped the Minister of Labour, who was also the Vice Premier, second in charge of Quebec, Pierre Laporte. And he was coming home from a meeting where they were actually discussing the terrorist demands of the FLQ. And so the War Measures Act was finally called at the behest, the repeated request of the Quebec government, the province of Quebec, and local officials in places like Montreal. Because after these kidnappings, they were having a hard time keeping their governments running properly, because everyone was afraid when they went home or came out of work, they were going to be murdered or kidnapped. Think of it as if you're American, that not the governor, but it's not a vice governor. But I mean, this is a critical position. This is not a low-key position. So finally, he called out the military. They did not start shooting into people's homes, but they, controlled areas for the police. The police were able to suspend temporarily civil rights, so they could arrest people and like without charge. And they eventually were able to, return one of them. But I believe it was the kidnappers and murderers of Pierre Laporte. So this politician was murdered. And with all of this, finally, they were able to taper it off. And in the decades that would come, there would be talk about separation. They eventually in Quebec, this conversation has died off more, and it's more about the particular rules that they have. At any rate, the reason I'm bringing this all up is to set the idea that the son of this prime minister would come in and defile any concept of due process or necessity for this. You've got a bunch of people having dances, sweeping the streets, shoveling, cleaning up garbage, feeding the homeless, giving business to local businesses that were going out of business after 2 years of the government's lockdown, heavy-handed lockdowns. Very positive response from the public, but the media and the government, because the media here gets direct funding from the government, attacked in lockstep. Now, before you think I'm exaggerating, I'm going to give you a little bit of a sample here, which YouTube normally censors, but I'm going to take a chance.
We've got 2,500 people watching with only 1,200 thumbs up. Come on, new people, click that thumbs up button. This channel is heavily censored by YouTube. These streams will not get as popular as others for that reason, but with your help, we can change that.
This sort
Please
of thing,
share this stream.
totally foreign to
leave
Canada.
Comments, click the thumbs up button.
Only when they have people with
They're
Molotov
advancing,
cocktails
and I'm stuck in the middle.
throwing bricks through windows do they normally do anything remotely like this.
Hang on, I gotta get back.
The sticks are remnant of thugs who used to be hired to beat up union workers back in the 40s.
Shit. Get down. Hey, get down. Okay. Ow. It just hit me down. Oh, boy. All right. Oh, shit. All right, stick around. I gotta get out of here.
Hey, tough guy.
Government had not
shit.
met to try and talk to the protesters
bad,
about
this is
what
bad.
they were trying to accomplish. This is about people losing their jobs, their companies. This is about the loss of core constitutional rights for
Guys,
2 years.
These guys are holding strong up here. I'm gonna get kettled. I gotta get out of here. I'm gonna get kettled.
Hold the line, you chicken shit.
All right. They're clamping down hard over here. Let me get over here. Oh no.
Hold the line. Sorry.
Yeah.
This is put together on a channel called Red Pilling Canada on Rumble.
Oh man, they're advancing hard. They're advancing very hard.
And make no mistake, this is an attack
They're
on a
pushing
civil
right through
rights
past the
movement.
trucks. They're pushing right through past the trucks, guys. This is getting very intense. Look at them pushing this old man.
And it followed already abuse from police
I got slammed earlier.
against
This is
elderly
heavy-handed.
people. But it was a definite escalation.
Man, these guys are all psychopaths. You're all fucking. I'm live, guys. I'm live right now. Come tune in
A
live.
few moments later.
That's what we do.
Shit, coming quick. Quick. Oh shit. Whoa, they're running. They got the spray. They're pushing hard. Oh shit. Wow. I've never seen an advance like this. They're running. The one cop's grabbing his other one, telling him not to go that far. That guy's doing too much. That guy's running way ahead.
They gathered these cops up from across
He's got
Canada
the pepper spray ready to
because
go.
they couldn't get enough local cops from the
They're basically body checking people here.
Ottawa.
They
Was
got the
served,
military
is
guys
served
coming in.
by Ottawa is served by 5 police forces, including our RCMP, which is our national police force, the OPP, which is the provincial one, the Ottawa Carleton Police. Well, I think they're just called Ottawa Police now, from the sounds of it. And I believe they also have like military police, and there's another one I can't remember what it is. But of all those police forces, they couldn't get enough people to beat Canadians en masse for a peaceful civil rights protest when the government wouldn't even speak to them. So, I mean, who's to blame? The government has a duty to try and communicate to protesters. That is just civilized behavior. And so they went across all of Canada, offered extra money to get the most violent and immoral cops out of every department. 2 of them apparently came from my hometown here. And when this is all done, I'm going to see if I can get their names and get them fired for what they did and go after the police chief if he had any role in proudly sending them as his website, as their website seemed to indicate. But we'll see.
A few moments later.
You know it's not right. You know it's not right. I have little children that can't go to dance class because they have it's not right.
Just skip hell.
He doesn't believe in this, but he'll
Look
still
at
be
these
here
sticks,
for
man.
it.
Unreal.
I love you guys, please.
They even made them bright to make sure people could see them, that they're proud that they're going to be clubbing people.
You had the CBC last week accusing the New York Times.
Here's the
saying there were no
host of the
guns
channel.
brought.
Reset, mais vous le savez, c'est quoi, j'imagine, le grand reset?
So again, guys, if you're just
See,
tuning in, we're
French,
here
English, we had people
on the
from
front
all
lines
kinds of
in the thick of it
ethnicities.
here in downtown Ottawa. As these police are advancing about 20 feet or so.
Je sais pas.
Coming
J'espère
in.
que vous ne le savez pas. J'espère que vous ne savez pas ce qui se passe, parce que si vous savez ce qui se passe, vous ne seriez pas ici, c'est sûr.
Oh. Okay. I'm trying. Shit.
This journalist is being trampled on the
just
ground.
brutally attacked. Ow. Oh, God. Holy. Oh, shit. Oh, God.
There are people
they're
in power
getting
who
trampled.
think that they are your boss, that these are their countries and are their
Oh, this is
societies,
brutal.
and that we are their serfs. That is what you're seeing here. Our narcissist child emperor is sending out thugs to attack people who dare not to cooperate with him. Everything he says.
Appreciate it. There's some sort of gas in the air. Just
There's footage in here, you know, there's a lot of it, but footage in here of them breaking things.
Security experts and municipal
There were
and
kids in the
provincial
area.
leadership that it has been essential
had their families
to the
there.
response. We've been very clear that these measures will apply only when and where necessary. Freedoms continues to apply.
This is image of horses that were sent in with a warning to scare protesters, but they incompetently ran over 2 of them, including an elderly Native American woman. They're attempting to reason with the officers. Of course, there's no reasoning with people who cover their. In this case, look at these people are covering their ID. Police officers are. It's illegal for them to do that in Canada. So these are paramilitary. I'm told they're out of Quebec, but no matter where they're from.
That has been the story. A flood of misinformation and disinformation washed over Canada, including
Striking people repeatedly. That is clubbing. spraying people with
have
gas.
restored
People were
order
hit.
to the streets of Ottawa and have ensured that we.
Yeah, you know, I mean, you've seen this stuff before, but I haven't seen it in Canada. I mean,
I didn't know if I was gonna get another breath because the last thing I saw.
this guy is being choked
was
out.
fists and knees. It was an ultimatum.
It's a disgrace. There's footage of cops bringing people to the ground and repeatedly kneeing them and hitting them when they're down. Okay, so let's move on to the further disgrace. So we've got two of the leaders so far, the so-called leaders helped organize this, have been denied bail. They're in prison without bail. And the charge for Tamara Leach, I remember, was that she was encouraging other people to commit mischief. Right? Remember, Justin Trudeau, who would not speak to these people, he went out of his way, instead of, waiting for the courts to decide, for a convicted terrorist who had killed one American ally soldier and blinded another one for life, fighting with the forces in Afghanistan with a grenade. He threw it at these Americans, killed one, blinded one, was arrested, and found to be a terrorist. Then he was sent back to Canada under Obama, and Trudeau gave him $10 million and couldn't stop slobbering all over the guy with apologies. These people want their civil rights. She's kept without bail. And along with, there's another fellow too who is now being left without bail. This fellow. George Tyson. So here is George Tyson, truck driver, wants his rights back, no bail. And this is, Tamara Leach, being arrested, no bail. Now, does that seem like it's not that big a deal? All right, well, here is a pastor being denied bail. He's in solitary confinement. He's been repeatedly arrested for essentially being a Christian. He opened his church, wouldn't let the government close his church. He got arrested. Refused to do what one judge demanded, which was that he only say what the government tells him to say. And so he was arrested again for that. He's been arrested for repeated nonsense that has no bearing in Canadian law. And he is currently, for speaking at the convoy, the protests, not breaking anything, not attacking or encouraging people to commit violent crimes or anything like that. He is sitting in solitary confinement, which is a violation of international law, by the way. This man is a police officer who was murdered. The person who is being charged with that was released on bail. Murderer released on bail. Suspected murder. They think he's the guy that killed this cop. Cold blood. Released on bail. How about Judge grants bail to Black Ajax man facing murder charge, citing very strong self-defense argument in death of White Kingston man. Oh, okay. Well, let's rule that out. Okay, he must be innocent, right? It must be overwhelming. I don't know why they don't just drop all the charges then if it's so overwhelming. A Black Ajax man charged with second-degree murder in the shooting death of a White Kingston man. Okay, so we've got to emphasize that he's black and the victim is white. How dare that victim be white? I mean, this is clearly something that should be emphasized in terms of criminal law. We should always first decide who's the victim based on their skin color and who is the criminal based on skin color, not the actions that were taken. But this, so the black man has a lengthy criminal record, but he was freed on bail. Because the judge said there is a racist conspiracy against him. I'm laughing, but this is what Canada has become.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
Just a quick update about bail hearings. So Tamara Leach. So there was a few days since I recorded this. We are now sitting on the 9th of March. And she was just granted on Monday the bail that she should have been able to have in the first place, though the justice who overturned the previous judge's orders, apparently did lecture her, which still makes him a disgrace and demoralizes our ability to have any faith in the justice system. But there was a couple of guys I forgot to mention. There's a man from Quebec. His name, let's see here, Steve Charlin, 48. He was involved in organizing things. Tamara was particularly the one who, as they said, spearheaded the fundraising. Of course, I haven't even gone into how our government and GoFundMe were a complete disgrace there. And a guy named Pat King is still being held without bail.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
This is absolute garbage. And, Trudeau wants to he keeps talking about, he does the Emergency Act. He talks about how all these roads are not, we need the economy to flow. We need these roads open and small businesses. He's so concerned about them after 2 years of locking us all down, stripping us our ability to make money, to have profitable businesses. 2 years. And he does the Emergency Act after 2 weeks with no threats of violence or terrorism whatsoever, without even speaking to these people. And here we can see, so I pulled this up, the history of this man. In 2015, there's a SNC Lavalin is a conglomerate that was committing crimes. So the RCMP, our federal police, laid criminal charges. Well, they were friends of Trudeau and his Liberal Party. So in 2018, he decided that he was going to start pressuring his own Liberal Justice Minister, WilsonRaybould is her name, Jody WilsonRaybould, that she should basically make these charges go away or turn them into fines. It was criminal interference was what he was doing. And it wasn't just some low-level lackey he was sending. He was sending someone from what we call his Privy Council, which is the most significant people in the country that work under the Prime Minister. So he clearly was committing crimes. His response was to deny all of it, accuse her of being a terrible liberal in his party, and kick her and another woman. Remember how he's the big feminist? 2 women he kicked out of his Liberal Party to get everyone else in line, like a good cult leader does. And he took direct control of the Justice Department, subverting it from its proper duty and impartiality.
Whether it's taping conversations without consent or repeatedly expressing a lack of confidence in our government and in me personally as leader, it's become clear that Ms. Wilson-Raybould and Dr. Philpott can no longer remain part of our Liberal team.
Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott were both told this afternoon they had officially been kicked out of caucus, a decision that came after a series of meetings where Liberals raised concerns about Wilson-Raybould's decision to secretly tape a key conversation in the SNC Lavalin affair.
When that cabinet minister is the Attorney General of Canada secretly recording the clerk of the Privy Council, it's unconscionable.
So this dick that we have in our highest office, this spoiled brat Marxist, son of a, terrible father and horrendous mother, he is here getting upset because she recorded a call in which he and his agent were committing crimes that should have put him in prison for the rest of his life. And he's complaining that she recorded him. She shouldn't have even had to record him. That's how bad our processes are in Canada with our government. We do not have safeguards in place. This should have been nipped in the bud back in 2018. Well, this recording is from 2019, but really in 2018 is when this should have been dealt with. And instead, now you can see we've escalated to the point where he will declare emergencies for his own convenience and attack people en masse. So he's very concerned about those protests and what it might do to small businesses, but he didn't seem very concerned. In fact, no one in the government even talked about the burning of churches in Canada, mass vandalism. Can you imagine going to church and you see this? So at the time, the news was really playing up mass graves that were supposedly found or suspected to have been found at the time, because we used to have something called resident school systems, and in those programs, they would commit what today we would consider crimes against humanity by forcing children out of native reserve areas from their parents and to go and basically be educated by the good white folk. This was run by churches and by government, including Justin Trudeau's father ran these. Anyways, so these people, these Marxists, were taking this opportunity to lash out at churches because they hate churches, they hate family structure, any of this sort of thing that adds stability to people's lives. This is the Wall Street Journal took note of this. Our papers didn't, the ones bought and paid for by the government. And they said, all in all, at least 56 churches have been set aflame or vandalized. That is insane. And Justin Trudeau, no state of emergency. Nope, no problem. Is he concerned about the murderers getting bail? No, but I guarantee you that his Justice Department interfered and made sure that these leaders of this peaceful civil rights protest did not get bail. You see why I'm pointing this out? These strings all attach. And when you're going to have a society, you can't allow things to go. I have a saying when it comes to politicians. Always prosecute. You never have an offense or a violation by a politician that you do not prosecute. In town here, some years back, quite a few years back, we had a mayor come into office. It was eventually revealed that he was abusing the credit card system he had put in place. He was using it for his own expenses. When this was revealed, he made excuses that he couldn't tell the difference between his two cards, one which was, I think it was blue and red, totally different colors. Of course, that's not an excuse. He paid the money back and got slaughtered in the next election. And he left with his tail between his legs. Then several years later, he quietly put his name back on and was voted back onto the city council where he sits right now. Why? Because what he did was criminal and he wasn't charged. If he had been charged, he wouldn't be sitting on city council right now. You always prosecute. We could have avoided all these problems and had a real prime minister, possibly, whatever that means, in office right now. Instead of one that bloviates about what's going on, condemning Russia. And no one should want Trudeau to speak out for their side of any engagement. I don't care what your take is on Ukraine. I think everyone pretty much agrees we all want the violence to stop and for Russia to stop dealing with it in this way. I think everyone pretty much agrees on that. But the particulars we disagree on. But what you also should agree on is you don't want someone like Justin Trudeau, who just attacked his own citizens with violence and is committing crimes against humanity, violating international law, being on your side, lecturing Putin or anyone else.
Canadian government trying
nothing
new
about the
tactics to end
churches,
the Freedom Convoy
or the
protest
Black Lives
over
Matter.
COVID mandates. The goal: get these truckers out as
This is an
soon
American
as
report.
possible. The government has tried to use a state of emergency, threats, and fines.
Seniors
now,
were being
Prime Minister
targeted,
Justin Trudeau has
beaten.
invoked the Emergencies Act for the first time in history.
The blockades are harming our economy and endangering public safety. Critical supply chains have been disrupted.
Yeah, but he wasn't that concerned. For, I think it was 3 weeks, gave these guys 2 weeks for a civil rights movement. For 3 weeks, natives, I think back it was in late 2019 or early 2020 before all the COVID stuff. And I don't even mean Native Canadians. I am talking about specific groups that act in their name, right? They were taking over private business areas like rail tracks and stuff like this. They were pinning workers out or in behind areas that they could or could not get into their areas, because Canada's got a lot of wilderness and there's resource development, right? So there's some seriously bad stuff going on, and including the use of violence and threats of escalating violence. For 3 weeks, he didn't care. And when he did, the response was nothing like we saw in Ottawa. Not nearly like we saw in Ottawa. And certainly the Emergency Measures Act wasn't taken out. Like, this guy, just look at his face. You just want to, I don't know. I don't ever want to see this face again. It's just a dumb face. So in Canada, he's so concerned about businesses with the lockdowns, which, by the way, I was against from the beginning, and I've been right repeatedly on every point that they were not scientific and that they were not legal in a free society in any way. They've already spent $300 billion by now. And that's without taking into concern any of the types of things where that money could have gone, the expense of how they had to gather it up to spend it in the first place. And we're a tenth of the size of the U.S., so we'll go ahead and add a 10 on that. You know, $300 billion is the equivalent for America spending $3 trillion. It is the most heavy debt we've ever had, and it's crushing. It's unbelievably destructive. And he's talking about truckers trying to get him to stop doing this for 2 weeks. Small investment, big payoff, in my opinion. And he doesn't have the right to spend all this money the way that he does. So gross total liabilities stood at $1.1 trillion in 2015 to 16. That's in Canada. And by 2025-26, gross debt is expected to reach more than $2 trillion, an increase of 91.6% in a decade. And I think, as you can tell, that's less than a decade. It's less than a decade. And almost, I would say, the vast majority of it came from this. Oh, it's an emergency. There's a virus. Have you guys heard of viruses before? Oh my goodness, we're all going to die. Listen, there's a computer model. It's this picture on the screen. And this guy, he said it. This one guy. He won't tell us how he did the model or how it works. But everyone, quickly, throw out your constitutions. Everyone. I don't understand how we all became so collectively stupid. All right. What else do I have for you? Oh, even Bill Maher, who is a leftist. But he's an old school leftist. He believes in free speech and civil rights. You know, those silly things that hippies used to march for? Here's what he had to say.
Justin Trudeau. What? You're laughing, but Justin Trudeau, I mean, I thought he was kind of a cool guy. Then I started to read what he said. This is a couple of weeks ago. He was, or maybe this is September, but he was talking about people who are not vaccinated. He said they don't believe in science. They're often misogynistic, often racist. No, they're not.
That was not smart of him at all.
Right. He said, but they take up space. And with that, we have to make a choice in terms of a leader as a country. Do we tolerate these people? It's like, tolerate these? Now you do sound like Hitler.
That was...
and recently he talked about them holding unacceptable views.
Wow. I'm surprised to hear that Trudeau said those things.
You didn't see the blackface? I mean,
If you don't know, for at least a decade of his young adult life into his mature years, at least a decade, Trudeau, by his own admission, did blackface so often he couldn't keep track. He would do it in public, when he worked at a school. He would do it when he worked teaching skiing, whitewater rafting. He loved it for Halloween, all occasions, completely inappropriate. Like a man-child screaming for his parents to set some boundaries so he knows he's being paid attention to, which apparently his parents never bothered to do. Let's see here. Oh. So why is he calling everyone racist? So I'm going to leave off maybe with a little bit from James Lindsay here, who talks about the new virulent forms of Marxism that most people are only becoming aware of now, like CRT, critical race theory.
Give me your quick definition of critical race theory, and give me some of the top thinkers, philosophers, activists, whoever it is, that were really the people who provided the underpinnings of the philosophy.
Okay, so I'll give you a simple definition they won't like first, which is that critical race theory is calling everything racist if you want to control it, until you control it. Because that's, in terms of what it is and what it does, that's really what it is. Just calling things racist until you have it under your control. Critical race theory, though, is
which is what Trudeau and other leaders like him do.
Fundamental belief that the organizing principle of society is racism that benefits white people. And they call it systemic racism that was allegedly created by white people and embedded into societal structures, hit Marx, superstructure, like law, especially law, but education and all of the other institutional structures that hold up society and shape society. So racism is a feature of the system itself and has to be critically examined using critical theories to identify it and to challenge it and ultimately to reject it fundamentally by creating a full social and cultural revolution that will be, conveniently enough, led by the only people who actually understand this, namely critical race theorists themselves.
Okay, so who are the top people who laid out the path to where we are now?
So the most significant person is going to be Kimberly Crenshaw. It's often, people often start by mentioning Derek Bell. Derek Bell was her mentor at Harvard, and Derek Bell wrote Race, Racism, and American Law in 1970, which is probably the first real text. They track back to W.B. Du Bois with The Souls of Black Folk from 1903, but obviously critical race theory didn't exist in 1903 yet. But he's talking about the double consciousness of having to inhabit, being a black person in a white society and what that looks like. So he's doing something like a proto-critical theory of race there. So they harken back to him. But Kimberly Crenshaw is really the person who codified it.
So just remember that with admissions that are coming now, including admissions that are slow coming, that they knew the things they're admitting now much earlier, sometimes months, sometimes years ago, that show that nothing they did was on good faith. It was lying to the public again and again. The most recent one is that because COVID skips from different species, they're what they call reservoirs in animals, which makes it impossible to eliminate through any kind of process with human beings of vaccination, at least with a virus that mutates as fast as a coronavirus. They knew this. They have been lying to us. Anyone who continues to support these positions doesn't do it because they care about science. Science, in fact, is being used as a term interchangeable with faith. When they say, oh, you're anti-science, they're saying, oh, you're not a believer of my faith. It's a social religion. And that's what I like about people like Lindsay. They're very good at explaining the origins of this. And he rightly points out, as I point out, that even though they don't talk about a deity like God or Allah or whatever name you want to choose for your deity, they have everything about religion. They have something in its place. Marxism today is meant to be a replacement for religion. It is meant to be something that transforms your society through revolution. And when you look around at your own society and you start asking, well, why is it that we've known since the 70s through many, many studies, meta-studies, that masks don't work and none of this was right and none of it was legal and it's a violation of our Constitution? How did that one thing even happen? Well, the explanation is that they have been molding young people's minds, first at the college level, and then working their way down. It's in cartoons, movies, it's in elementary school. You need to start speaking to your children. You need to start clarifying for yourself that there are people out there with thoughts, ideas, and they'll commit actions that make them your enemies. They want to destroy what is good for you, and it doesn't matter that you can't reason with the individual. You have to be prepared for these types of things and stop being stunned by the idea or being in disbelief that it can be something irrational and destructive. So that's my rant on that. It's kind of a long video. It's been a while though. I need to let a little bit off my chest.
You said you wanted freedom. It's time you learned that freedom is never a gift. It has to be earned.